UGA Football News presents today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. On today's Sports Report, we'll talk about University of Georgia football and more. Today's Sports Report is brought to you by Happy Sewing and Quilting, offering products that will help you show your Bulldog pride. Hall Shots Photography, going above and beyond to provide pristine and professional photography for all of life's greatest moments, plus many other fine sponsors. And now, here's your host of today's Sports Report, Chris Hall.
Well, it's good to have you with us today as we come in for today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. I'm Chris Hall, your host. Good to have you with us on our program today, and we look forward to having a very special guest with us in just a moment. And we'll be talking to Mike Farrell from Rivals.com, and we'll be talking a little recruiting for specifically for Georgia football, but recruiting across the nation as well. And, of course, we'll be taking just a quick look back at last week's game between Georgia and South Carolina. And we'll be talking about the upcoming game between Georgia and Vanderbilt. And so the season continues to go. Georgia actually coming up to the last scheduled game of its season. Of course, there'll be that reschedule of that game between Georgia and Missouri, and we're still waiting to find out when exactly that game will be played. But Matthew, good to have you with us today in South Georgia, where we're broadcasting from. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Yes, it is. Great to be with everyone today. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Looking forward to to Georgia's next contest as well.
Yeah, we had a great Thanksgiving with family. Ate too much, but then we watched football and everything was okay. Well, let's talk just quickly, about the game last week between South Carolina and Georgia. Of course, Georgia winning 45-16. Georgia, the week before, was held to just 8 rushing yards against Mississippi State, but the Bulldogs showed out on the ground, rushing for 332 yards against South Carolina. J.T. Daniels, in his second start, had a very productive game. Of course, he didn't have to pass as much as he did against Mississippi State in the South Carolina game. He completed 10 of 16 passes, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He did give up his first interception of the season, but it's probably was not his fault, that interception. So Georgia with a big win over South Carolina, 45-16. A couple of notes from that game. Georgia's senior offensive guard Ben Cleveland was named the Southeastern Conference Offensive Lineman of the Week following that game. Ben had a great game. In fact, this is the second time this year that he's been named the Offensive Lineman of the Week in the SEC. And Ben had just a great game. He had 5 knockdown blocks. He missed no assignments, graded out at 90%. Played 48 snaps against the Gamecocks. So you go, Ben, and we love the guys in the trenches. They don't get the attention that the quarterbacks, running backs, or wide receivers often get, and even the defensive backs. But, man, where would we be without that offensive line and defensive line for Georgia? A couple of other notes quickly. Dawgs Mathis, who started the year, of course, as the starting quarterback for Georgia, has gone into the NCAA transfer portal. Dawgs, just a great guy, had some difficult medical issues, of course, and we hope him well. We wish he will get to a situation where he can really shine. He's got great talent, great ability. Hate to see him go, but he kind of reads the handwriting on the wall with the emergence of J.T. Daniels and the quarterback situation, and he's a gamer. He wants to play. And so Dawgs Mathis going into the portal. And just one other thing, Greg McGarity, at the end of this month, who is the athletic director for Georgia, will officially step down as the athletic director at Georgia. His deputy, Josh Brooks, is taking over on an interim basis. And it could be that Brooks, who is 40 years of age, has a lot of support to get the job permanently, especially if Carla Williams, another former Georgia deputy AD, is content at remaining in Virginia as the athletic director there. So a lot of news on and off the field, Matthew, last week, having to do with the University of Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, and Brooks has been there for a while. McGarity, of course, long traditional history being at Georgia as athletic director. Matter of fact, he's gone through a lot of ups and downs in his position as athletic director there, and there have been cries for him to be, removed at times. But Josh Brooks, definitely, second in command, been there for a while. I think that, will be taking over on that interim basis. He does a good job. I've actually met him before personally. Does a great job there at handling the facilities and the operations and whatnot. So I look for him to, to put his name in the hat, and he's got a good chance, I believe, to get it.
All right. Well, let's get to our very special guest on our podcast today. It is our great pleasure to welcome in Mike Farrell from Rivals.com. Mike is the national recruiting analyst and director for Rivals.com, otherwise known as the Godfather of recruiting. And so, Mike, it is good to have you with us today on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. And how you doing today?
Doing good. How are you guys?
We're doing absolutely great. Now, what we do around here since 2020 has been kind of weird is we do a lot of check-ins with our neighbors. Make sure our neighbors are doing well and everybody is okay. And when we have a guest call in to today's Sports Report, we always do a health check-in. So tell me, Mike, how have you fared and your family fared during this weird year of 2020?
It's been a little different. Obviously, I travel a lot, and I haven't been able to do that for my job. But beyond that, just adjusting to the different recruiting landscape that we're dealing with. A lot of film evaluation as opposed to in-person evaluations, and day-to-day life. I work from home anyways, so it doesn't affect me that much. But I would like it to end. I mean, it would be nice if this could, get back to normal sometime soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, let's talk a little bit about recruiting. Of course, 2020, obviously, and it's redundant to say it has been just a different kind of year. Tell me, I know there's been restrictions on in-home visits and visits from prospects to campuses across the country. And, in Georgia, where we are, we're in full-fledged football mode. Very few schools opted out of playing football. I'm talking about high schools in Georgia. And so it's been kind of normal as a high school football season can be in 2020 in the state of Georgia. We have the teams on the fields and we have fans in the stands. Of course, there are restrictions and there's controls to try to help mitigate any kind of situation coming up with the COVID-19. But how has 2020 affected recruiting across the nation from your perspective?
It's been difficult for the kids. A few of them have been able to get out to visits, but they're not hosted visits. So they're seeing campus and they're watching games, but they're not having any contact with the coaches. So most of the relationships that have been built prior to the shutdown in March, and through Zoom and video and text and DMs and all that stuff. So it's been interesting for a lot of them. Some of them are committed to schools they've never visited, which is the first time in 25 years I've been doing this that's ever happened. And that will be, one of those things we're going to have to see if the transfer portal blows up in a couple of years, because when you do have kids coming from Florida going to Oklahoma or from North Carolina going to Ohio, they may not like it or they may not feel comfortable and they haven't had an opportunity to visit there and see if they, relate with the coaches or not. So that's been the biggest challenge. A lot of uninformed decisions compared to previous years will occur. Informed as much as they can be, but compared to the amount of data that they could get from visiting constantly and having in-home visits and going on official visits, this class has really been robbed of that opportunity. So the things I take away from it, roster management is going to be difficult because everybody got, the extra year last year for the NCAA. And the transfer portal is going to be very active. And my understanding is now that the NCAA is giving everyone a mulligan on eligibility. So even seniors from this year could return in 2021. Is that correct? Yes, but they haven't discussed the 85 player scholarship limit. So I don't know how you fit all that in. So, your good players, your really good players are going to go off to the NFL if they're eligible.
Right.
And then you've got those juniors, seniors, and fifth-year seniors, that you have to have conversations with. If they want to come back, do you want them back? There's a lot of difficult decisions that need to be made there that are more difficult because of this extra year of eligibility. Before, you could always say, well, you're done. That's it. You had your 5 years or 4 years, and good luck to you in your career. But now there's going to be kids wanting to come back, and there's not going to be roster spots for them. And nobody's reducing the recruiting class numbers. I mean, these are all still classes over 20.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a mess. And I don't know what the NCAA is going to do. Now, they could always come in and say, well, okay, for just the interim for a year or 2 years, we can go 100 scholarship players. But some schools can't afford that. So it's a difficult thing. I think they kind of pulled the trigger on allowing that extra year of eligibility too soon. And they did that when they thought that there wasn't going to be a fall football season. And now, we've had a fall football season, and now I don't think they know what to do.
Yeah. Well, it's across the board. There's a lot of us who do not know what to do with the year of 2020. Well, our program is specifically targeted in on the University of Georgia. So if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about Georgia recruiting. Georgia yesterday got a big recruit, Tyree West out of Tifton, Georgia, for the 2022 class. But talk a little bit about Georgia. I think you guys have got them ranked at number 7 right now nationally. How's Georgia doing this year in recruiting?
Georgia's won the recruiting title for us the last 3 years. So the expectations are extremely high. 7 is good, and they've still got room in this class. But it'll be the first year in 3 years that they won't finish number 1. I think that's going to go to Alabama. They have a tremendous class that they're put together here. They're number 1, and it's almost an insurmountable lead, barring some surprises. There's a few schools that will move up. I mean, I think Georgia will move from 7 into that 3 range with battling LSU for 3 or 4.
Right.
Ohio State will probably stay number 2. But it's a good recruiting class. I mean, you can't finish number 1 every year. They've got the quarterback that they needed, Brock Vandagriff. That was extremely important because he had originally committed to Oklahoma, so they ended up getting him back. The offensive line has been addressed very, very well, and that'll continue that offensive line tradition there. And on the defensive side, they needed to replenish their defensive backs, and they've got some really good ones there as well. So the class overall, top 7, top 3 or 4 when they're done is absolutely excellent. And I think the one area of concern for Georgia fans is the wide receiver position. Now, Jermaine Burton has looked great, and he's been a bit of a surprise coming across the country and being so good so quick.
Yeah.
Pickens has obviously lived up to the hype as a 5-star. They didn't kill it in wide receiver this year. So some of these guys, and they're big receivers, they've only got a couple of them. LaDonnie Mitchell out of Nashville and Jackson Meeks out of Alabama will have to surprise and step up. And they need to use the tight end more. They just don't.
Yeah.
And that's something I think the offense has to change because they got Darnell Washington, who's pretty much 8 feet tall, and a great target. And then you've got Brock Bowers coming in from Napa, California. It's just one of those puzzling things as to a team that likes to play a tight formation, run the football, play power football, just doesn't utilize the tight end as much as they should.
Yeah, I mean, and Washington is, he is such a big target, and, he was so hyped up before they brought, before he got to Athens that, you just thought that he would change the game, so to speak, at the tight end position for Georgia. And I don't understand why the ball hasn't been thrown to him, as much. I mean, you get the guy, if he actually catches the ball, bringing him down, he's like a refrigerator out there, so I don't understand why that hasn't happened more, personally. And then, mentioning...
He's 6'7".
Yes.
He doesn't have great hands, though. That's the one thing.
Right.
Like, so some of the things you might see in practice that we don't get to see.
Right.
You have to build up that trust level. But I think JT sees the field so much better than Stetson or Mathis or anybody else that's going to start to develop where you're going to see checkdowns and things that he's going to go through progressions, whereas the other guys were like, first read, balls out.
Well, I think Todd Monken is just kind of feeling his way. He's new at Georgia. I think he's kind of feeling his way, and I really think, and I've never heard this expressed by anyone, but I really think that he really wasn't sold on the quarterback position until JT Daniels stepped forward. But I think he's feeling his way, and I think from this point on, I think the Mississippi State game just really kind of brought him to where he needed to be as the offensive coordinator. Is that kind of your sense with him, that he was kind of feeling his way through the Georgia way of playing a game?
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to open it up a little bit more. Jamie Newman was supposed to be the quarterback, and
right.
he's a dual threat guy, big physical kid he could run zone read with. He could do a lot of different things with it. So I think they were preparing to open the offense a little bit that way. I mean, Georgia's not ready to go to a spread or run and shoot or anything like that. But with Newman, they could work more off of play action. They could use him as a weapon in the running game. But he opted out. So then, you look to Daniels and he's not ready. They cleared him medically, but physically, clearly he was not ready to play. Otherwise, he would have. And then you're down to, trouble. I mean, Dwan Mathis is, to me, more of a wide receiver. I thought he would end up going off to Georgia and play wide receiver because he's a very good athlete, but not a great quarterback as far as accuracy. And Stetson Bennett, I mean, this is a two-star kid that doesn't have the arm strength for the SEC. So, he was working around severe limitations at the quarterback position. Now he's not. JT Daniels is healthy. He was a 5-star. He's got great field vision, but he's also got touch. And he can throw the ball downfield, which is key. So you're starting to see it all come together. Just unfortunate that the season started the way it did because Georgia's obviously eliminated from the playoff.
Right.
But now you're starting to see these guys gel and develop. And if you can get a few more weapons for Daniels, which they do have in this class, I think next year is going to be a much better season.
Yeah.
And then, you mentioned a moment ago, Tyree West. Can you talk about him? I mean, just your general assessment on him specifically. And then I know you mentioned Vanderbilt in the recruiting class. Could you mention something about West, what your thoughts are on West, and then also who you think is the most critical commit in this class?
Yeah, the 2022 class is off to a good start. I mean, West is a early decision. Everybody felt he was leaning towards Georgia, but to decide this early and come on board is going to help the rest of the class, especially in state. We just moved him from a projected strong side defensive end to a defensive tackle, and we come out with our 2022 rankings next week. And he's a 5-star caliber player. We've already got 5 stars on him, but he's going to be a disruptor from the interior line, and that's, to me, that frees up everything. If you can push the pocket but also chase the quarterback and shoot the gap, we see what, and I'm not comparing him at all to Aaron Donald, but you can see what one player who's dominant as a pass rusher from the interior can do for an entire team. Yeah. That's the role he's going to play. Now, they got Deion Bowie as well. Groves Killebrew, the defensive back from Snellville. I mean, they got 4 in-state kids, all of them 4 or 5 stars. So 2022 is off to a great start. But without a doubt, 0% chance of argument for me, Vanderbilt's the most important recruit in this class, in the 2021 class, simply because the quarterback situation, be careful what you wish for. You get 5 stars in Jacob Eason, you get 5-star in Jake Fromm, you get a 5-star in Justin Fields. Clearly, out of those 3, the best is Fields, but he came last. Eason was the starter. I thought he was doing very well, but he got hurt. Fromm took over, did great. Never really progressed, but was steady. Brought him to the national title game, brought him to the SEC title game. So leadership is there. All the off-field stuff that we loved about Jake Fromm was legit and true. And then Fields, you try to mix in there, but they used him as a runner, and that's not what he wants to do. So you lose Fields, Fromm goes, Eason's transferred, and you're left with this quarterback mess. Now, you got JT, but Vanderbilt starts rebuilding that, progression of quarterbacks. You see what Clemson does with similar situations. They had 4 and 5 stars. And,
that's right.
They handled it better because Trevor Lawrence was the better player. They put him in there. It wasn't, it was a very difficult decision for Dabo Swinney to do that. Now he's going to hand off to DJ Longalele, who will hand off to another quarterback. You got to space them out. So
Right.
Brock will, get in there and compete next season. He's a huge kid, like very physically. He reminds me of Brady Quinn from Notre Dame a long time ago.
Right.
Physically big kid. They'll put up numbers.
And he's had a great season this year.
Yeah, and maybe learn under JT and then be the guy after JT. Because JT, I think, will have the one more year, then go off to the pros, and then you got Brock. And then you just got to continue that succession. So, Brock is important. He's got to be happy. He's got to be developed. And if not, then you got a huge gap. And I don't mean to, skip over the Carson Becks of the world.
Right.
That's
but,
right.
You can kind of tell who, from the high school level. I mean, Carson Beck didn't have great numbers in high school and wasn't a guy that he was a borderline 4-star guy. It'd take a lot of development. He's sort of like a 2-3 year down the line type of guy. But Brock is a guy who can come in. If JT gets hurt, Brock can come in and play, and he's the most important.
That's good. Now, the early signing period is December 16th through the 18th. Which is kind of weird because, speaking of Georgia, the Missouri game was canceled, of course, with Georgia because of the COVID-19 situation. It will be played either, apparently, December 12th or 19th. As far as I know, the SEC has not made a final determination on that. You got to think that Kirby Smart and the staff is hoping that they'll be playing the 12th so they can focus fully on recruiting during that early signing period. Most of the kids will sign during the early signing period across the country, won't they?
Yeah. Right now there's 19 kids in this Georgia class. I would expect all 19 of those commitments to sign. Nothing's changed. If there were a situation where the NCAA said the dead period is still till the end of the year and we'll figure it out after that, then some kids would hold off, but the dead period goes till April 15th now. There's no hope of official visits. You can try to get to places on your own, but again, most of the visits you see in December and January are, basketball visits. You go through a basketball game because football's over, and that's even harder to me to get to because it's more of a confined space, and the in-home visits don't exist, which really changes the whole dynamic of recruiting. So you'll get to see some kids. Nyland Green is making his decision, and I think he'll sign early. Davian Sorey is making his decision soon. He's from Florida. He'll sign early. Mason Smith, the defensive tackle from Louisiana, Corey Foreman, the defensive end from California, big name guys. I think most of those guys will sign early. Now, a few of them are announcing on January 2nd. I guess the NBC game, which was canceled along with the Under Armour game, they're having a show where kids will declare. So what you're going to do is you're going to see some secret signings.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that in air quotes, where kids will sign December 16th and then try to keep it quiet until January 2nd. But the word gets out. But 85% of kids sign in the early signing period over the last 2 years, and I don't see that changing.
All right. Well, it's great to have Mike Farrell from Rivals.com with us. He's the national recruiting analyst and director for Rivals.com. We're talking some recruiting. We're going to take a break. We'll be back, and Mike will join us, and we'll make some quick predictions on some SEC games coming up this weekend. So stay tuned to today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.
Don't go away. We'll be back in just a moment with more of today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.
Hall Shots Photography, featuring the work of award-winning photographer and Georgia football lover Matthew Hall, is a proud sponsor of today's Sports Report. While Matthew is at home on the sidelines of Sanford Stadium taking beautiful action shots of another Bulldog victory, he also specializes in other types of photography, including landscapes, portraits, weddings, and promotional photos to help promote your business or your special cause. Matthew is also a trained videographer, and he loves capturing those always exciting high-in-the-sky drone shots. Matthew has been the camp photographer for various football camps, including those featuring Roquan Smith, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and other Bulldog greats. You can check out Matthew's work on Facebook at Hall Shots Photo and on Instagram at Hall Shots Photography. You can contact Matthew at hallshotsphotography@gmail.com. That's hallshotsphotography@gmail.com. Matthew has a camera, and he'll travel to get that right shot for you. Contact him today.
Happy Sewing and Quilting is a proud sponsor of today's Sports Report. Happy Sewing and Quilting offers custom and professionally made items that will help you show your Bulldog pride. How about a custom and professionally made 100% cotton face mask featuring beautiful Bulldog fabric? Of course, everyone in your family will need more than one. And just like the Bulldogs on game day, Happy Sewing and Quilting can and will deliver. From custom-made face masks to baby bibs to tote bags and more, Happy Sewing and Quilting will help you get ready for game day or any day you want to let the world know you love the Georgia Bulldogs. If you're interested in items featuring the colors and logos of other teams, or if you're interested in non-sports related items that meet your taste and show off your style, Happy Sewing and Quilting will be more than happy to help you. For more information, you can contact Happy Sewing and Quilting at ahall1921@hotmail.com. That's AHALL1921@hotmail.com. Contact them today.
Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.
Yes, sir, and we're back on our program, and we're so happy to have Mike Farrell with us from Rivals.com, and we're talking some recruiting. But now we're going to talk about games coming up this weekend, make some predictions, and we'll see how we do. Mike, we're not too good at predicting, to be honest with you, around here. We kind of miss and hit, but we have a lot of fun with it, and we're glad you're going to be helping us with this. Now, this coming Saturday, it'll be Georgia against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is 0-8 on the year. Georgia, of course, coming in at number 8 now in the rankings. 6-2 on the year. And it'll be at 7:30 at Sanford Stadium. It'll be on the SEC network. And it'll be senior night. Of course, Georgia will be recognizing their seniors. Some of them may be back. Now, some interesting notes about the game quickly. Sarah Fuller, the goaltender for the Vanderbilt's women's soccer team, actually kicked off in the second half last week, the first woman to take part in a conference game, an SEC conference game in SEC history. She kicked off. She'll be on the roster. She'll be in Athens and may get the opportunity, who knows, to try a field goal. Also, Derek Mason, the coach for Vanderbilt, of course, a tough tenure at Vanderbilt, was let go as head coach, and the offensive coordinator, Todd Finch, is the interim head coach. So we have Georgia against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, one bright spot for the Commodores is true freshman quarterback Kenny Seals. He's completing 65.9% of his passes, has over 1,600 yards and 10 touchdowns, but 9 interceptions so far this season. So I'm going to go with that. You got to go with Georgia. I'm going to go with Georgia over over Vanderbilt. What do you think, Mike, in this game?
This one isn't very difficult to pick.
No, it's not.
I think if you look at the line, it's just difficult to pick. But it's straight up. I mean, Georgia's going to absolutely destroy them. And,
yeah.
I like Todd Fitch. Like Todd Fitch. He's a good coach, and I hope he has some competitive games and gets a shot at that job because he's been around for a long time.
Yeah. What is the line? I hadn't seen I saw it one time like 36 points. What is it now? Do you know?
Yeah, it's 35.5.
35.5.
Wow. And you just don't know because Vanderbilt, you
never know.
They gave Florida trouble. Comparatively, they were also 30-plus underdogs and covered that. So you just don't know because Georgia's going to roll over them, and then, the second team will be in, and the garbage points could be scored. But this is going to be a Georgia blowout.
What do you think, Matthew? We've been pulling for Vanderbilt every week on this program.
I'm gonna go with my friend Mike. I'm gonna say Georgia steamrolls.
Yeah, we just can't go against Georgia in this game. All right, Texas A&M at Auburn. Texas A&M 6-1 on the year. Auburn 5-3. Could be an interesting game. Texas A&M has won its last 2 games. Auburn lost big last week to Alabama. Texas A&M at Auburn. Hey, I got to go with Texas A&M. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with you. And you always expect Texas A&M to stub their toe, and they're number 5 in the country right now, and on the verge of being one of those potential playoff teams. But the defense at Texas A&M does not get enough attention. It is one of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the country. That defensive line is ridiculous, and they're going to make things very difficult for Bo Nix, who's a talented kid. Kellen Mond is solid. He's not making mistakes. He's still not overly accurate. But Isaiah Spiller in the running game should handle Auburn. I think Auburn, after that demoralizing Iron Bowl loss, may come out here and lay an egg. And A&M's a little bit ticked because they didn't blow out LSU. But I think it'll be a 2-touchdown game, and I think Texas A&M will win.
Do you think, Gus? He's always on the hot seat. It seems like in Auburn. Do you think it's getting hotter for Gus at Auburn?
It's one of those, like Tommy Bowden for years at Clemson was on the hot seat for years. Every year his house was up for sale, and he was going to be fired, and they kept him, and then they finally made the decision, got rid of him, and got Dabo, and obviously fell into a great situation and got lucky because he's an amazing coach. I think it's time for Auburn to move on. I don't like the offense. I don't like what Gus does with the offense. I don't think there's enough weapons for a guy like Nix. And he's on the hot seat. His buyout is ridiculous, of course.
Yeah.
Last year when the Arkansas job was open, they gave him even more money. I don't know if they could afford the buyout. So I think he stays, but they're kind of going to tread water as long as he's there, it seems.
Yeah. Okay, Matthew, what do you think? A&M or Auburn?
Gus Malzahn, like I said, the buyout, just like he said, is ridiculous. But I think if it was not, Malzahn would already be gone. So I'm going with Texas A&M.
All right, Arkansas at Missouri. This game was supposed to take place last Saturday. COVID within the Hawks program forced the game to be postponed. Mizzou instead faced Vanderbilt, and they won 41-0. Arkansas took the week off. So you have Arkansas 3-5, Missouri 4-3. Both of these teams, I think, have had better than expected seasons. This will be a noon game on the SEC network. I think it's going to be a really good game. My heart is with Arkansas in this game, but I don't know if they can go in and beat Missouri. Missouri's been playing really well, so I'm going to have to go with Mizzou. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, this is a real interesting game for two teams that aren't getting a lot of attention in the SEC. This will be a fun game, and I do have Missouri as well. I remember when the schedule came out, the SEC only schedule came out, and then talking just briefly through text with Eli Drinkwitz and Sam Pittman. They both got absolutely screwed in this schedule. I mean, they looked like it was going to be potential 0-8 seasons, and they've both done a tremendous job.
Right.
0-9 seasons. I like the defense for Arkansas. Felipe Franks has played better, but Missouri at home, the way they've been playing, the confidence they have, and also their defense has been very, very good lately. So I'm going to go with Missouri.
All right. What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I love Sam Pittman. I mean, and I think he's done a good job considering the schedule that he's gotten this season. But with Missouri looking the way they looked last week and being on a roll, playing at home, Arkansas suspect. I'm going with Mizzou on this for sure.
All right. Florida at Tennessee. This will be the 3:30 game on CBS. Florida, of course, could clinch the SEC East title with a win. The Vols are losing, apparently, their starting quarterback, who's currently in quarantine for the Vols. So true freshman Harrison Bailey may get the start. The Vols have 16 players currently in quarantine due to a contact tracing via the Auburn game. So you have Florida 7-1 at Tennessee 2-5. And, of course, you got to go with Florida. And speaking of hot seats, Jeremy Pruitt obviously on the hot seat, but he got a big contract extension at the beginning of the season. So, again, the buyout thing, obviously you got to go with Florida. So I got to go with the Gators on this one. How about it, Mike?
Yeah, they're going to destroy them. And this is one of those subset rivalries. Florida-Georgia is the big rivalry, but Tennessee and Florida do not like each other at all. So I think this is going to be an opportunity for Dan Mullen to put up a big victory. It's time for Harrison Bailey to learn under fire. It's going to be ugly, but this is the future. It's a 5-star quarterback, and he's got to start, building confidence of his teammates. But Florida's going to win this game. I mean, again, Florida over the last couple games should have blown out both of their opponents, and they did, but not to the extent people expected. And believe it or not, the offense, even though Trask is the leader in my book for Heisman, and Kyle Pitts is, putting up amazing numbers, I think the offense is being criticized the last couple of weeks. And I think they're going to put up 60. I think they're going to just destroy them. And Pruitt's safe to me, because, things were better in the Butch Jones era by this time, but things got really bad.
Right.
And I think Pruitt will bring them back to, some sort of respectability next season. And I think Philip Fulmer likes Pruitt, so I don't think he's going to get fired, but they're definitely going to lose this game.
Yeah. All right, Matthew, what do you think? Florida, Tennessee?
Yeah, Trask, he rolls just like he has. I mean, Heisman front runner, no question about it, been really a stud this season. I mean, I'm actually, it almost reminds me a lot of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow-like season where Joe Burrow, really wasn't that great, one season, and then all of a sudden everything he threw was completed. And I think Trask is on that same kind of path. Tennessee, not even going to go there. I mean, then they have 16 guys in quarantine due to contact tracing. There's no question Florida rolls, Trask rolls, and Mullen runs the score up.
South Carolina at Kentucky. South Carolina just it seems to me, a demoralized team after having their coach fired, and they've had a lot of turmoil on that team. South Carolina at Kentucky. South Carolina 2-7, Kentucky 3-6. 7:30 game on the SEC network. I think the only ones who will really watch this game are people from South Carolina and Kentucky. But you got to go with Kentucky on this one, so I'll take the Wildcats. What about it, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an ugly game. Offensively, both these teams struggled all season. But South Carolina, as you mentioned, I mean, when Muschamp was fired, he had players opt out. The team just sort of quit, and I just think this is a team that needs new leadership and a complete reboot, and just limp to the finish and get it over with.
Yeah.
But Kentucky should win this game by a couple touchdowns.
All right, Matthew, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky definitely here. I mean, I like South Carolina. I think that, with Muschamp being booted and then several players opted out, directly thereafter that. I mean, it just added insult to injury at the coaching position to have players opt out and leave right away, too, when you lose your coach. They haven't played well. Kentucky at home, I'm going with the home team.
Okay, and at the beginning of the season, the next game and our last game that we'll look at seemed to be the game of the year, perhaps. Another one, our game of the century, but no, it's not going to be that. Number 1, Alabama, 8-0 at LSU, 3-4. A disappointing season, of course, obviously, for LSU. Nick Saban is feeling better, we understand. After battling COVID-19, he hopes to be on the sidelines this weekend when Alabama takes on LSU. The Crimson Tide have been dominant all season. They won last week, of course, over Auburn 42-13. So, you got to go with Alabama. But my question is, could this turn into maybe a competitive game? Could LSU get its back up? What do you think?
No chance.
No chance.
Alabama's going to blow them out. Terrence Marshall just opted out. He's their, the best target at wide receiver. The two quarterbacks that are sort of rotating in there, the true freshmen, neither of them are ready to play yet. And kind of thrust into a situation that they're not ready for without a lot of weapons. They lost so many guys. I think they lost 20 guys that are currently on NFL rosters from last year's team, which is amazing.
Yeah.
The defense has been a bit of a mess. They played okay against A&M. They put in a spirited effort. Derek Stingley's back, so that shuts down one side of the field, sort of. But there's no way between the running of Najee Harris and the passing options that Mac Jones has, they're going to win this game. Nick Saban's going to want to win this game by 40, 50 points at LSU. That's what he's going to want to do.
Yeah, all right, Matthew, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. My answer would be Mac Jones, Najee Harris, and the Alabama wide receivers. I mean, no question. LSU, there's absolutely zero question, and there's no chance for LSU to be in this game.
Well, that's going to wrap up our program today. Mike Farrell from Rivals.com has been our guest today. Mike, we love having you on our program. We love your knowledge and just the way you are able to communicate some good information for us. And we thank you so much for carving out some time to be on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. It's just been our great pleasure to have you with us, and we hope you stay safe these days, and we'll be following you and knowing that we can trust what the information you have to share with us is good information. So, Mike, thank you for being with us today.
All right. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate all the support you got. I'm trying to build the Instagram Rivals Godfather, and you guys have been awesome in helping me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anytime.
Thank you so much, and stay safe up in Connecticut. Well, that's going to wrap up our program. Any final words, Matthew?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Mike Farrell, National Recruiting Analyst and Director for Rivals.com, and just thank him for his time today, letting us pick his brain, and for, doing the predictions for, talking some recruiting, doing the predictions for this upcoming week. And, as always, go Dogs.
All right. Today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall is a presentation of Hall Sports Communications. The executive producer of today's Sports Report is Trip Block. Our technical advisor is Garrett Carter. The director and board operator for today's program has been Charles Graham. To contact Hall Sports Communications, you can email us at chrishall71@hotmail.com. That's chrishall71@hotmail.com. We thank our sponsors, Hall Shots Photography and Happy Sewing and Quilting, for making our program possible today. If you're interested in being a sponsor for our program, contact us today at chrishall71@hotmail.com. Thank you for joining us for our program today, and we look forward to being with you again next time. Until then, be safe out there, and may God bless you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. We thank our many fine sponsors for making our program possible. Be sure to join us for our next program as we keep you up to date with University of Georgia football and more. Until then, be safe and go Dogs.